Good morning, my name is Jason Stepp with Stepp Manufacturing. Today we're going to be doing operator training on a Stepp SPHD 2.0. The 2.0 stands for 2 cubic yards. It'll hold approximately 3 tons of asphalt. This particular unit does have some optional equipment we're going to go over also. It has the optional Tack Tank system on it and some other optional warning lights and things like that. So we're going to go over the whole operation of the unit, front to back, teach you how to operate the unit. It's a very simple machine to run and operate, and it's got a lot of neat features in it that are going to make your job easier to do. So we're going to kind of reposition the camera now, and we're going to start kind of from the front. We're going to work our way back. Okay. All right, so we're going to start at the front of the machine and work our way back. All of our machines have some type of a braking system. This particular unit has hydraulic surge brakes on it with a pintle ring. All of our hitches are adjustable, even the hydraulic surge brakes. So you can adjust your hitch height, you know, on the front of the machine. On the electric brake units, they have a hitch plate on the front, and you can adjust that hitch. Now we equip our trailers with equalizers between the 2 axles, so we can be a little bit tongue high or tongue low, but we always recommend to the user that we get it as level as we can. It doesn't look like a very big trailer, but once we get it loaded full of material, it is a heavy little trailer. With that equalizer, it does distribute the weight evenly, you know, between the 2 axles, unless we're really tongue high or really tongue low. So I always recommend that you adjust your hitch accordingly to your tow vehicle. Now on the hydraulic units, it does have a safety breakaway chain, and on the electric, it's also going to have electric breakaway. This is probably the #1 thing I don't see attached when I go to county shops or highway shops, street departments, and this is a safety device for you, the driver. If in some instance the trailer becomes disconnected from the towing vehicle, this is going to pull and lock up the brakes so that the brakes on the trailer stop and hopefully prevent it from causing a serious accident. The electric breakaways on the electric units is mounted on the side. It's a smaller cable. That's probably, like I said, one of the few things I see that doesn't get used very often. Now, the breakaway systems on these hitches are there for your safety and your protection. If in the case of a disconnect between your vehicle and that hitch, you know, if the brakes don't lock up and there is an accident, the driver is responsible, not Stepp Manufacturing, not the county or the city or the state entity that you work for, but the driver, because that's really your responsibility to make sure that you hook up that electric breakaway device. Pretty self-explanatory, pretty simple, pretty easy to operate. Just hook it onto your trailer, you know, and in the event of a disconnect, it's going to lock up. All of our trailers are equipped with safety chains and also some type of a light plug hookup. Again, pretty straightforward, pretty standard stuff. The next thing we're going to talk about on this particular unit is the battery box and the charging system. Now this unit comes equipped with the optional Tack Tank, is equipped with an engine. Now units without an engine, we have to have a good supply of power from the towing vehicle. And we do this via the light plug. Most of the new modern trucks are wired with a charging wire right into the light plug. With the units with the engine, it's not as critical. But it is very important that we have good supply of power to these vehicles from our towing vehicle. Without it, our diesel burners won't operate, the electric over hydraulic hoist won't operate, things like that. So there is a charge wire set up in the light plug. Make sure that that's hooked up. Refer to the manual if you need specific wiring instructions, but that is located in the light plug. So in the battery box, we have 2 Group 24 automotive batteries. One of them runs your diesel burner system and controls for the hopper heating system. The other battery is going to run our hoist system. So that's going to allow us to tilt up and down. The other thing that this box is also equipped with on most units is a battery charging system. This is a very good option. It's an option that I highly recommend because we are taxing those batteries a lot during the course of the day, especially units without an engine. You know, so if we can plug them in and have everything charged, ready to go in the morning, the machine's just going to operate much better and smoother, and the burners are going to fire better, things like that. So the onboard charger is built right in. It's a 20 amp 2-bank battery charger. So you just plug it in and it's going to come right up to charge. Once it hits that charge, it's going to go into a float mode. So it's kind of a unique charger. So in the event of we want to keep mix hot overnight, and we want to use that diesel burner to do that, as long as your battery charger is plugged in, it's going to come up to temperature. Our batteries are going to come up to fully charge. Once the temperature drops and the burner kicks back in, the battery charger will automatically recharge the batteries and kick back in. The unit itself does take a pretty big power draw to run, especially the burner system. The burner takes about 14 amps to light and about 8 amps to run. So there's a pretty good power draw. So without that charging system, or without being plugged into the battery charger, or the engine running, your battery is just not going to last very long. 20, maybe 30 minutes without some type of a charging system plugged into this front of the unit. One of the things at Stepp that we do on all of our units is all of our connections are soldered connections. Parts that you may replace are on weather pack type connectors, but everything's soldered. So there's good solid harnesses. If you need to replace just the electrical harness, you can buy that replacement part from us. It's wired right into the terminal strips into the battery box. The next thing we're going to talk about, I'm just going to come around here a little bit, is our optional engine and hydraulic system for our Tack Tank and our Tack Tank pumping system. So this particular unit has been ordered with a Honda gasoline electric start engine. That engine, like I said, does have a charging circuit. It's about an 18 amp charging circuit on here, so it's going to keep your batteries charged while your engine is running. Pretty self-explanatory on how to operate it. There's a choke, there's a fuel shut-off, and a throttle. So you're going to flip the choke, start the engine. Once the engine warms up a little bit, we're going to turn the choke off, idle our throttle up to give us some hydraulic power. So that engine is direct coupled to a hydraulic pump, which then supplies hydraulic pressure and power to the optional pumping system. So this particular unit has a 20 gallon per minute Viking pump on it, driven hydraulically. It does have a forward and a reverse valve on it, and it also is a flow control valve. So we can control the speed of that pump with the valve. So this isn't just an on and off valve. You can control that, right from here. Our Tack Tank systems are set up so that you can recirculate right back to tank. So you can keep warm material flowing through that hose and wand when we're in between patches. So that's very unique in the fact that we allow you to recirculate back to tank. The operations of the pumping system are very simple. We're either going to be pumping material out of the product tank, up through the pump and out through the wand, or we're going to be pumping it through the optional flushing system. The flush tank is located on the other side, and we'll go over that in just a little bit. So there's basically one valve that says product or flush, and one valve that says wand or recirculate. So when we first fire things up in the morning, we're going to be in recirculate. So what we're going to do is suck the material out of the Tack Tank and dump it right back in. So once All right, so we're going to go over the operations of the pumping system. It's a very simple and easy system to operate. Like I said, it's set up so that we can recirculate product back to tank, get things warmed up, also recirculate through the wand. So the first thing, obviously, once our engine is running, we're going to make sure that our pump is in neutral before we make any adjustment on the two valves. There's just two valves on the system. This valve, which you probably can't see with the camera angle, just says product or flush. Pretty straightforward. Do we want to pump product, or do we want to pump the solvent that cleans the wand and pump out? So obviously, if we're going to pump product, we're going to put that into product. And then we're going to talk about this valve. This is probably the most important part of this system. This is called a WPC valve. It's called a wand pressure control. So that's going to do a couple of things for us with this pumping system. This is going to allow us to recirculate back to tank. I don't know if you can see with the video, but it says recirc when it's all the way in the down position. So that's going to allow it to suck it out of the bottom of the tank, come up through the pump, and right back into tank. So once we get a flow established, and you'll be able to feel the lines will start to get warm once we get product flowing, then we're going to start to move our WPC valve towards the wand position. So this is going to control the pressure, or how much product we're going to send to the wand itself. So to get a nice fan spray, you're going to have to be somewhere up in the 5, 6, maybe even 7 to get a good amount of pressure to spray. Some of that depends on the types of products and how thick they are, things like that. But this valve also acts as a pressure relief valve. So if I'm all the way into the wand position and I shut the handle off, the flow of oil's got nowhere to go. So that's why we want this valve somewhere in the middle when we're operating it with tack oil. So when I shut this off, then the excess flow goes back to tank and it keeps the pump spinning and keeps everything warm. The only time that we're ever going to be into the complete wand position is when we're flushing it at the end of the night. And we'll go over that in just a few minutes. So again, just to recap again, guys, the WPC valve, wand pressure control, it's going to control your pressure out of here. We don't want that all the way in the wand position when we're spraying tack oil. It has to be somewhere in the middle. It does have a hydraulic relief valve, but the pump's going to moan and groan, and you're going to build heat in your hydraulics if you run it for a long period of time all the way in the wand position. So once we're in the wand position, there's a couple of places that we can actually control the flow besides the WPC. We can also do that with the hydraulic flow control valve. So this is going to be your forward and reverse functions. You won't do much reverse except for at the end of the night when we're going to suck everything out. So most of your functions are going to happen in forward. And this is a speed control, and we'll probably fire the machine up and you can see the change in speed just by stroking it or de-stroking that valve. So you don't have to have this thing wide open, you just have to have it enough so that you can get between these two to get a nice fan spray out of your unit. You have more pump than you can spray through this hose. It's a 20 gallon per minute Viking pump, hydraulically driven. Realistically, 1 to 2 gallons at the absolute most through the spray wand itself. So now that we're kind of familiar with how to spray with it, we'll go into the flushing positions. So we're going to go back to recirculate. We'd put our valve in neutral. We'd come over here and turn our valve from product to flush, which is going to allow it to suck out of the flush tank that's located on the side of the tack tank. So once we turn it to flush, we're going to put our pump in forward again. That's going to allow us to suck flushing solvent through the pumping system and back through the wand. Now this is the only place where we're going to have this in the wand position. Now you would normally take your wand out because obviously we do not want flushing solvent. We don't want flushing solvent to go back into our product tank because that'll damage our product or thin it out. So we would dispose of that properly in a bucket or wherever you guys dispose of your hazardous oil or waste oil. So the reason that we wouldn't have this somewhere in the middle when we're flushing it, because if it is, we're going to send some of that flush oil back into the tank. So again, to recap, when we go to flush it, we put the valve in flush, we put this all the way into wand, we take our wand out, put it in a pail, and then turn our pump forward on. Now you're going to see the change when it goes from tack oil to solvent. Obviously it's going to get really thin, and you know, you're going to definitely notice the viscosity differences between those two. A couple of the other things on the tack tank, it's a 40 gallon tack tank. It'll heat and store and applicate just about any type of product. This particular one is set up with an external pump for the water-based emulsions. If for some reason someone doesn't clean the lines out, which will happen at some point during the life of this unit, someone will just forget, you have to warm that plumbing up and that pump with a small torch. Not a Bertha torch, a small hand torch. And it usually takes a couple of minutes to get things warmed up, and then once we get warm oil flowing through there, things are going to flow good. There's always lots of questions about oil and how long can I store oil, what oil should I use. I always tell customers to refer to whoever they're purchasing the oil from. Now, water-based emulsions, which is what most of us are using in the United States for a tack oil now, are very good products, but they do have shelf lives. So I strongly recommend that you get what you need and use it up. Most of the water-based emulsions have a shelf life of about 90 days from the time they're manufactured. So you can't put them in there and leave them in there forever, because what happens is they start to separate. Once those oils separate, there's no emulsifying them again, and you end up with a real gooey gobby mess. So get good emulsion, use it up. The tank is a bottom fired configuration, so it doesn't take long to heat it up. It's got its own thermostat controls, which we'll go over here in just a little bit. Very simple to operate. The top fill over here is where you're going to fill. There is also an overflow. In the case of, overfill it or overheat it, it's going to come out that overflow into behind the tack tank. With that, we're going to kind of move on to the hopper. So we're going to reposition here again. And we're going to go over the heating system and the operations of the main hopper. All right, so when we're talking about burner controls, we've got our product temperature and our oil temperature. And the one thing you got to remember is we're not heating the product with our burner. Our call for heat light's going to come on if our thermostats tell us we need heat. But our burner is actually heating the oil, and the oil is heating our product. So it's a little bit, you got to kind of wrap your head around that a little bit. Our oil may be up to temperature even though our product's not yet, and the burner will be off. So we got to make sure that we're not panicking because our burner is shut off. So because our oil is actually what's heating our product, not our burner. Our burner is heating our oil. So those two thermostats are wired in series to operate that burner system. So in the morning when we fire this up, we've got our oil, say, set at 350 degrees. Our oil is going to come up to temperature and our burner is going to shut off, even if our product isn't up to temperature yet. So again, just to recap that briefly, when we set our temperatures, we're going to set our oil 25 to 50 degrees hotter than our product. Our oil is what's heating our product, so that's going to come up to temperature first and shut the burner off. When the call for heat light comes on, that means that our thermostats need some heat for this unit. A couple of the other things in the control box, we do equip every one of them with a voltmeter. If for some reason your burner doesn't fire, the first thing we're going to ask you is what's your voltage. That burner, like we explained earlier, takes anywhere from 10 to 14 amps to light and about 8 amps to run. So if I don't have a good supply of 12 volt power, I'm going to see that on my voltmeter. If we're below 12, there's a good chance that burner's not going to run very well. So start the engine, make sure we got a charge wire plugged in or we've got our battery charger plugged in to make that burner operate. The other thing we have here is our strobe light. This one has an optional Whelen strobe light on it, and that strobe light has different blinking options. That's what the other switch above that. Now on units equipped with the optional washdown system, that is also wired into the same switch as the burner. So it's a 3-position switch. Neutral is obviously off. Down is going to be your washdown, and up is going to be your burner system. So you can hear the blower come on. So if I was to go and use the washdown, it's going to shut the burners off. Now the burner's not going to run real good because we don't have an engine running, we don't have a good supply of power. So in the event that you're going to use that washdown, you're going to hit that switch down, it's going to turn the burner off. The other thing that'll turn the burner off in this is this system is equipped with a tilt switch inside of the box. So as that box starts to lift, it's going to hit, I think when it hits about 10 degrees, it automatically cuts the burner off. Now we do that as a safety precaution because we don't want the burner firing when that flue starts to become exposed as we start to tilt the unit. Pretty simple, easy to operate unit. There's not a whole lot going on there other than set your burner controls and let your stuff cook. One of the things that I found is the materials don't slide as nice unless we get them up to temperature. So if you're having problems with it sticking in your box and you're running at 250, 275, bump your temperature up a little bit and materials will flow better. The other thing back here while we're on this side of the unit is our hoist controls. Pretty simple up and down operation. We'll talk about that briefly. So I won't hoist it all the way up, but this will go to 52 degrees. We'll do that here in just a minute. I want to go over the hoist system a little bit with you guys. excuse me, we run a Mfg truck hoist, electric over hydraulic. We're one of the few companies in our industry that runs an actual scissor type hoist. The power plant's located. All right, so we're going to go over the hoist system now. We're one of the few companies that runs an actual truck scissor hoist. We run the Mfg hoist in ours. It's designed for dump trucks, probably under some of the dump trucks that you guys currently have. We have electric over hydraulic power plant. It's located down in here. Might be a little tough to see that. We'll shoot some pictures of that so you guys can see that too. Hydraulic fluid tank. The hydraulic fluid, the big tank that's over here is for the hydraulic system on the tack tank. This is your hydraulic reservoir for your hoist. That does use an ATF, so there's a little different oil. The main hydraulic tank for your pumping system is going to use an AW32, just an all-weather 32 hydraulic oil. There is a spin-on filter for that. The reason we run this scissor hoist is because it gives this trailer tremendous stability in the up and in the down position. It also allows us to do our weight and balances so that this trailer really does tow nice, loaded or unloaded, and gives us that really low profile so that you can load it very easily with a skid loader, or if you got a big front end loader, our box is long enough that it's easy to load that if you're running cold patch materials. There are a couple of grease points on the hoist, obviously, where it pivots once a month, once a week is awesome. Once a month is probably adequate. Nothing special there for grease. Just any old lithium grease will work just fine. We just want to keep things lubed up there so that things swivel and hoist. This unit will dump to 52 degrees without it being attached to the towing vehicle, which is pretty unique. Our competition uses outrigger legs and things like that. We don't need that because we've done the weight and balance. Our center of gravity, even when the box is up, is between our two axles. Here you can see the drain plug for when you drain your oil and replace it. There's a drain plug, and then obviously the cold fill on the side. Now you'll notice there's places where the wires come in and out of the frame. We try to protect them as much as we can. Everything comes back into a central junction box, which is located in the back of the trailer. And refer to your manual. There's wiring schematics if for some reason something gets ripped out of there or whatever. About 4 or 5 years ago, we redesigned this trailer to have everything be a bolt-on instead of a weld-on. So that gives you the ability to replace fenders or shackles or something like that if they ever do get damaged. This does have a one-piece shackle system on it, which is a bolt-on system. It's about 400 or 500% heavier than the shackles that come with the axle, so it's been a very good system for us. But even our subframe is bolted in. If you get the unit without some of the options and you decide, I want a shovel cleaning box down the road, there's already holes in the frame for that, so it's just ordering the component part and bolting it on. We're really proud of this hoist system and our body system and our trailer system. The way that this has all come together is it really does give you guys a very nice towable trailer that tows at or above highway speeds, loaded or unloaded. Gives us a low center of gravity and a very good weight and balance system. Like I said, it's just extremely stable, even without it being hooked onto the truck. We're going to reposition the camera on the back end and probably get real close to wrapping up our training here. And if you guys do have any questions that we didn't cover here today, always feel free to call the factory on things like that. All right, so we're going to go over the back door and shoveling platform. So when the box is full, you're going to shovel right out of here, and you can see the spare tire. This particular unit had a spare tire shipped loose. But when the box is real full, you're going to shovel right out of here. Once we start to get, our material in our box starts to, we need some more, we're going to tilt that back and send some material towards the back. So if we're going to have large patches, we're going to fold the pan up and dump directly onto the ground. If you've got small patches, you're going to fold that up and dump it onto here. This is kind of nice because you can also run 2 or 3 guys with shovels, where here it gets a little jammed up, with 2 or 3 guys. So you have that option. If you don't like the extra spill pan on it, it's just 2 bolts, you can take it off. That actually came from a customer. They added that, they liked that quite a bit. So If you are going to dump directly onto the ground, you do have to make sure you fold this up before we hoist that box up, and then that'll fold and dump right over the top of that. We're going to go over the burner system a little bit while we're back here too. Before we do that, we're going to talk, it does have some latches on the hood. If you've got 3-ton or 4-ton of mix, depending on what size box you have, in here we start to dump it and these are unlatched, you do run the risk of the material coming, blowing the doors open and spilling over the top. So those are just safety latches to keep that material inside the box where we want it. So we're going to briefly go over the burner system and what's going on here with our burner system and how it works, and a little bit of troubleshooting stuff also. How the burner works is that burner again fires into that flue that wraps into the bottom of the hopper. That flue is submerged in that oil, but to get a good flame we got to have a good airflow and a good air fuel mixture. So depending on what climate you're in, you may need to adjust your burner system. Here in Minnesota, we have to adjust our burners from summertime use to wintertime use. There's 2 ways of doing that. We have 2 air bands. The colder it is, the more air we're going to need because our fuel is going to be thicker. So right now, this burner itself has about a 1.5 gallon nozzle, which is, I think it's about 250,000 BTUs. We don't need a lot of air with a 1.5. So that's accomplished with the air band that's located on the side. So you loosen the screws and you adjust that. As operators, if you notice it's smoking a lot, it needs to be adjusted, because if it smokes too much, what'll happen is it'll soot up and then the burner won't function properly. So inside of this burner there's an eye that's going to sense that flame. If it's burning real dirty and we have a lot of smoke coming out of the hopper, excuse me, that eye will get sooted up and it won't see the flame. So the burner will try to light, it doesn't light, it's not going to see that flame, it's going to shut itself off. So the burner does have that flame out protection system built into it. So in the event of a misfire or no fire, it's going to go into a lockout. If it goes into that lockout, you have to manually turn the burner power switch off and turn it back on to cycle it again. The burners, as long as they've got good power and good fuel, they're very reliable systems. If and when someone runs it out of fuel, which I don't recommend with any diesel appliance, you will have to bleed it. The bleeder screw is located right here. It'll take 2 guys, 1 guy to run the switch, 1 guy to run the bleeder. So pretty simple system. Your burner pressure should run anywhere from 90 to 120 psi. There is a built-in gauge that's located in the back there. If you see that gauge fluttering a lot, it means you've got air in the system. You're gonna have to bleed that fuel out. But if you have burner problems, we do have a great burner troubleshooting guide, and you can always call the factory and they can walk you through things also. It's a very simple system. You've got a motor with a blower and a fuel pump, and we've got our spark ignition and a fuel valve. So when we call for heat, when that call for heat light comes on, it sends power to that burner system to start to pump fuel, start the spark igniter. Once it lights, it sends a signal back through that little CAD cell, that eye, back to the primary control to say, hey, life is good, keep pumping fuel, keep burning. If it doesn't light, again, it's going to go through that lockout. It's going to go for reignition. If it doesn't light the second time, then it's going to go into that lockout stage. Right above the burner is one of our thermostat, or our temperature probes. The other temperature probe is located right behind the burner. Obviously, one's for your product, one's for your oil. A couple of other things that we're going to talk about briefly before we wrap up. This particular unit does have a hand torch system on it with its own 20-pound bottle. We also have some optional tool holders, great for anything with a handle, shovels, brooms, lutes. It's just a spring style clamp, so you can clamp those tools so you got everything on hand. The running gear, we run Dexter high-speed axles on these. Once a year, check the bearings, check put some grease in the hubs, things like that, but pretty low maintenance. This particular one's got hydraulic brakes. Most of them have electric brakes. And again, it's just going to be doing your annual maintenance on that kind of stuff. With that, we're going to wrap up our training today. I'd like to thank you guys for purchasing our products. If you have any questions, please feel free to call the factory. Our telephone number is on the sticker. and it's also on the VIN tag. So if you guys have any questions or need further training or need maintenance or service, please feel free to give us a call. Thank you again for purchasing our products.